Hi, I'm Jeannie.
And I'm Kristen.
And we're from Jimmy Bean's Wool, and we're here today to talk about some fun stuff.
Awesome stuff.
What do you have on your mind?
Ooh, I have pattern modifications on my mind, Jeannie.
Yeah, me too.
All the time, actually.
Well, because Kristen is really, really tall.
I am. You can't tell from right now because,
I know, I'm scrunching up.
Because we're sitting, but I'm almost 6 feet tall. I'm like just a hair under, so I have to modify a lot of things to make them long enough for my body, so yeah.
And she's really, really good at it.
Well, I'm getting good at it, let's just say.
Oh, no, I think you're pretty good because your cowl that you're wearing, you modified, didn't you?
I did, and I actually didn't modify this because I'm so tall. I just modified it because I fell in love with a yarn that was a little bit different than what the pattern called for, and it's actually Annabella's Cowl by Church Mouse Classics. It's a really beautiful design, actually, and the way that they've done this pattern is they've made it long enough to make into a hood, so really you could take it and wear it like this, but here in Reno we get about 300 days of sunshine a year, and so I didn't really need something that was going to be hood length. It's a really great pattern, but for me I just wanted to shorten it, so I also wanted to make it work with one skein of yarn of each of the two types of yarn that it calls for. So I actually use Madeline Tosh Merino DK and Kid Silk Haze by Rowan, and I just used one skein, and I started my it's a knit purl 4 section for just about 10 inches or so, and then I just went right into stockinette and finished it, and then just ended when I ran out. So I ended up with a much shorter cowl, as you can probably tell, but I'll take it off so you can see. It's actually quite a bit shorter,
Ooh,
but
I gotta tell you, it's so soft.
it's really soft, yeah.
It's luscious.
And the more I wear it, the softer it gets. It's
what
really,
color
really
is
nice.
this? Is this Amber Trinket?
It is. It's Amber Trinket with Dewberry, I think, is the Kid Silk Haze color. And it kind of made this really lovely purpley, pinky.
It really is beautiful. It's luscious.
Yeah, and I've been wearing it like crazy all winter, and it's really the right size for me. So it worked out really well to modify the pattern that way. It was pretty simple. I actually did talk about those modifications on our project log as well, so if you want to try it yourself, feel free to check it out there also.
Well, and that's what prompted us to think about how to encourage you to be fearless in your knitting.
Absolutely.
Go forward and make changes that will work for you. We're not all exactly the same, because I'm definitely not almost 6 feet tall. So,
well, and not only that, but our needs or our tastes may not be exactly the same, and so if you see a pattern you like the general idea of, there's no reason why you can't change it just a little tiny bit to make it work better for you or your style or whatever it happens to be, your reason for wanting to change it. So
well, and with that said, we have here Laura is always doing little modifications, and she loves knitting pure and simple.
So we all do.
We all do, absolutely. And this is Knitting Pure and Simple's pattern, Baby Pullover 214. And you can see that it's got some diagonal stitches in it. Most of Diane Susie's patterns are just plain stockinette with maybe a little bit of detail here and there, which allows for some great modifications.
Absolutely.
And I think if you look in here towards the back, Laura got these diagonal stitch patterns out of, I think it's that tab.
The Vogue Knitting, Ultimate Knitting book.
Right there, those diagonals. So all she did, she didn't change anything about the pattern. She is still getting the same gauge that she wanted for her pattern. All she did was add a bit of a stitch pattern, and remembering the increases for the shoulder raglan sleeves. Yeah. She paid attention to her pattern and added those shaping, not shaping, what am I thinking of? The diagonals.
Right.
Right, around those increases for the raglan.
Exactly. Well, and what's really neat too is it just kind of adds a fun texture to this already unique yarn. It's a variegated yarn. This I think is Lorna's Laces
Tuscany.
Tuscany. Okay, yeah. So it's the shepherd worsted in Tuscany. So it's already got really great texture, but then this just adds that much more texture with the diagonal pattern, and maybe some interest too, because after you've knit a few of these in stockinette, you might be ready to try something new, but maybe not you know, something really drastically new. So this might be a really great next step to play around with some stitch patterns in an existing simple pattern that you have.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted to talk about, and modifying patterns. Do you want to talk about this stubborn cardi I have here?
Sure. Actually, I don't know what you've done with it exactly, but maybe you can help me out.
Let's see.
Let's take a look.
Okay.
Jeanne is an awesome modifier.
Well, now I have to confess, because if you go on the project log, you'll find out that this has been going on for a while.
I think you started this, like, what, a while ago? Maybe a year and a half?
Maybe a year and a half, maybe even a little longer, but it is a wonderful pattern. It's the Summer Open Cardigan 294 by Knitting Pure and Simple, and I love Diane's patterns for that very reason, because they're so easily modified. What I did was, it calls for a worsted weight yarn, but we used to carry a yarn by Southwest Trading Company, their soy yarn, and it's lighter weight, more like a DK. So the way I modified it was got the right gauge and then changed the size just slightly. And you can also see that I added some striping in here and just carried that through the raglan portion of the sweater. And really, I've got to finish this. I'm so glad we pulled this out. The other modification I did, which probably Kristen will appreciate, is I made the rib bands for this portion, this collar portion or front portion, wider, because I wanted a little more drape when I wore it. I have tried it on several times to make sure it fits, and you can always put a little bit of waste yarn in your piece, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's the great part about knitting from the top down, is you really can try your piece on as you go. So if you are playing around with size, you can, it's a really great way to, oh, well, you know, maybe I use a smaller yarn and smaller needles. Maybe I'll just knit until it does meet under the arm, so I can try it on as I go and just make sure that the measurements are going to work. It's
right,
really...
and for someone tall like Kristen, who probably has a little bit broader shoulders than a pattern is written for, that's a really good thing. So top-down knitting, modify patterns, don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. I mean, play around with your gauges and try different needle sizes, and I mean, especially when you're doing top-down, it's even easier. And sometimes you can even you can actually do this pretty easily with seamed garments as well. You just kind of have to sit down, look at your pattern, and do a little bit of math first, a little swatching, see how far you're gonna get. And it's you know, it's also learning to know your body as well, and making clothes for it. And there's gonna be a couple of misses in the beginning. You may not have some perfect sweaters, but they make great gifts if you end up with some that don't fit, and then you know what to do next time. And I know it's hard to spend that time in you know.
Yeah, but there's no wasted stitches in knitting. There
never.
Really isn't.
Because every stitch that doesn't work is a lesson learned. So you know,
that's
we can
exactly
take that
right.
away from it.
So I'm Jeannie.
And I'm Kristen.
And we're from Jimmy Bean's Wool. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
Thunder rumbles on this American summer night. There's kids on the corner stuck in a switchblade fight, and the rock and roll bands play for